With the outbreak of World War I, the newly formed GVTU tried to press the domestic industry to produce armored vehicles. On September 19, 1914, the 1st Army Division of the Russian Imperial Army was created. This was the first armored car company, staffed entirely by domestic vehicles like the Russo Blatt Type C, with heavier fire support provided by 3 trucks carrying guns. One of those, the Messingen Mugengler, was armored. In action, it demonstrated the high relevancy and effectiveness of gun-armored vehicles, but it also revealed the numerous shortcomings of such a conversion. Indeed, the body armor was far from complete and exposed the gun only protected by a traditional shield. Nonetheless, the GVTU decided that the formation of new platoons would include their composition of more technical, advanced armored trucks. The design process began in the fall of 1914 at the Putilov factory. Innovator and inspirer of the project was Major General Putilov, which held the post of Chief Officer of the Infantry School. In his mind, this armored truck was supposed to strengthen the quality of armored car platoons on his battlefield. He also personally drafted the future armored cars of the Russian army. At the base of the project, a bilateral RWD 4x2 5-ton truck was chosen, then produced by the American Garford Motor Truck Company. This truck had a top speed of 35 km/h or 22 miles per hour, and at the MT of a mass of 3,931 kilograms. This model had already attracted the attention of the army and its high payload allowing for thicker armor and heavier weapons, including artillery guns. Previously purchased by the General Commission and the weighting gauge of the Military Automotive School. However, the initial choice of the 75mm or 2.99-inch gun, Model 1910, was the first dismissed as the imposing significant modifications of the truck's chassis and a number of other technical problems needed to be addressed first. Comparative tests were carried out at the Infantry School on the 8th of November 1914, with the Maxim 37mm gun, the autocannon, the Hotchkiss 47mm rapid-fire cannon, and the 57mm Nordenfeld. They were all proven calibers used by the Navy to destroy torpedo boats at the short ranges. The 76mm was nevertheless selected. It had a revised version of the compact and light 3-inch mounted gun of model 1909, mounted on a new and lighter model cartridge. Serial production of this weapon began at the Putilov factory in 1911, and continued until mid-1915 with 407 guns being built in all. It usually shared its ammunition shells with the Model 1909 mounted gun, but it was reduced charge. Maximum initial velocity of the 6.5 kg high explosive shells were about 381 miles per hour, which was about 1,250 feet per second, and the cassiter shot about 2,700 miles per second, which was about 900 feet per second. The gun was mounted on the rear platform of the pedestal made by an iron sheet with welded joints, and the ammunition storage was sufficient for 44 shells. 12 of them were housed in the turret itself, and 32 in the machine gun fighting compartment. The gun barrel itself was protected by a U-shaped shield. Auxiliary armaments comprised of 3 7.26mm Maxim machine guns, model of 1910, the PM 1910, with the neutral water-cooled barrel. 2 were placed on the side of the sponson and the third in the rear of the turret, side by side with the guns. This was fed by tape cartridges of 250 rounds each, so 20 tapes for all of them, which was about 5,000 cartridges in all. The armored body was developed by General Putilov himself, and the innovative design, which featured a rolling steel sheet produced by the Igorska Corps plant with the thickness of 6.5mm. It was immune against the 7.2mm Mosin Nagant rifle and the 7.92mm German Mauser model of 1898. And the thickness differed from the Army and the Navy models, which were followed. The 6.5mm for the Army, 9mm side for the Navy, 6.5 for the Army, 7mm for the Navy, which was the radius, 6.5 7mm for the bottom, Navy Army, and the roof housing was 6.5 for Army, for both of them actually. Forehead turret was 6.5 for Army, 13mm for Navy, and the side sponsons were 6.5 Army and the 7mm Navy. The hull was divided into 3 sections. The front section comprised of the engine, armored 2-hatch radiators, the driver, the commander seat behind the driver, the fuel tanks in between to reduce overall length, Both could see through the armored flaps and additional round pistol port sights for the sides. There was also a hatch for the roof and the driver component where the commander could stand. In the middle was placed the main fighting components for the sponsor machine guns could fire within the arch of 110 degrees, and most of the ammunition storage and tooling were in the middle as well. The rear was occupied by the main gun turret and the large sloping front plate, a traverse angle of 260 degrees, which could access through a butterfly hatch of the roof. It could also communicate with machine gun components for resupplies as well. The engine was a carburetor gasoline 4-cylinder air-cooled with the capacity of 30 litres for Army or 35 litres for Navy, served by a 5-speed gearbox, 4 forward and 1 reverse. Due to the weight of the armoured body, maximum speed was about 18 km or 11 miles per hour, and only 3 km or 1.6 miles per hour in reverse, causing the turmoil in operations due to the tactics news. To this end, the transmission was modified and a special reverse clutch operated by a lever in the driver's seat, of course, was installed. With this coupling, all 4 forward gears became reverse ones and the rear one became the front one. A mirror inspection device located on the right side of the cab and operating like a periscope was fitted to help the driver, but later proved ineffective in combat. The engine could be started both from the inside and the outside by an electrical starter. The transmission chain on the rear axle was protected by an armoured chasing, and the axle rested on a double artillery type Army spokes wheel. The chains were mounted for better grip in the snow time conditions. Production began at the Putilov factory, and in late March 1915, the GVTU initially ordered for 30 armoured cars, and by August 1915, 19 had already been delivered and another 11 were in various stages of completion. The last car was commissioned by the 28th of September 1915. But already on the 2nd of September 1915, Putilov had received an order for 18 more intended for the Naval Department. These were to be used to protect the marine fortresses of Revel, later Tallinn. These had a number of significant differences, namely with the body thickness and the construction according to some sources, with a new extended chassis and also apparently a new more powerful engine, the 35 horsepower. Ammunition was increased to 60 shells and 9,000 rounds for the machine guns. However, these extra chassis were to be purchased from the United States and only reached Petrograd on the 13th of February 1916. Combat weight was increased to about 8.6 or 11 tons, and their dynamic characteristics were then deteriorated. Later modifications comprised of a new rear wheel, a rear wheelhouse intended to improve the rearward driver's vision. Already in mid-1915, field makeshift conversions were already being made, and it made them redundant. The first Putilov-built reverse seat was already in the end of January 1916, and it was accepted for testing, and conversion was gradually carried out through 1916. On the 16th of April, the first batch of Garford Putilovs were put at the disposal for a passive defense. After 2.5 weeks to train the crews, on May 3rd, 1915, this unit was the Southwestern Front at the disposal of the 5th Company of Armoured Cars. The organizational structure of the AC platoons consisted of 2 Austin Putilovs, 1 Garford. Sometimes the platoon had 3 Austins though, with the auxiliary and technical fuel and supply trucks staffed by cars and scouting motorcycles. In total, the Army was provided 13 of these AC platoons, which were already nearly all assigned to proper names. Example, the 5th platoon was the Immortals, or the Fearless, the 6th platoon were the Siberians, the Terribles, and the Zabalitskis, the Kolonevnets and the Barons. The Navy platoons operated within the Motorized Artillery Division of the Sea Fortress of Peter the Great, which also had their proper unit names. From 1915, the Putilov Garford unit served at almost all areas of the Russian-German front. Despite rather weak handling and characteristics, especially off-road or on soft ground, these armored trucks were popular because of their firepower. The Navy versions actively participated in battles of the relevance of the end of World War I. The 1st Siberian Rifle Corps units under the name of the Relevance and the Invincibles supported until the end of 1917 the 11th and the 77th Division regiments, defended the capes of Ola, Rabun, Borningenberg, and Rapadanspres. However, due to the collapse of the army and the general retreat, both units were captured by the Germans in general good condition and after minor repairs put back into operation. In October 1917, two other Marine units participated in the München battles, during which the first-rank captain S.P. Shinko distinguished himself during the defense of Oreshenku Dam. During the retreat, two armored cars were blown up in order to avoid their capture by the enemy. Losses were surprisingly low. In August 1916, Commander reports state that about 15% of their armored cars had been lost in action. During the Russian Civil War, captured Garford Putilovs were largely used by the warring parties, but mostly by the Bolsheviks. One of the first used by the Whites was in the Yushchenko-Slav uprising, which began in July 1918. These armored trucks participated mostly in major operations of the Civil War on both sides, and many machines were renamed and according to the preferences of their new owners, like the Karl Marx, the Trotsky, the Korlev, and the Zaitsevs. 1920, as a part of the 42nd Consolidated Heavy Detachment of the Red Army, 6 attacked the Konoshevsky bridgehead. These red vehicles acted as the mobile anti-tank reserves, whether the Whites were given the British and the French tanks for this task. With the defeat of the White armies, more ex-Tsarist armored trucks fell into the hands of the Red Army. But because of the severe lack of spare parts and maintenance, by December 1921 this fell to about 26, of which 15 were active and 11 were reported for repairs. By 1923 it was decided to completely remove the chassis, and some of them were turned into rear cars. This task was given by the Bordeyevsk engineering plant, converting 21 Garford Putilovs. In 1921, the ABTU Commission declared all types of World War I era armored vehicles obsolete. Subsequently, all surviving Garford Putilovs were dismantled and the armored plates transferred to other Red Army vehicles and tanks. Some weird conversions. During 1916 and 1918, German troops who had captured at least 5 Garford Putilov armored cars. At least 3 of them were rearmed with German machine guns, probably the Maschinengewehr or 8, and this included German armored divisions, the Kampfen, the Feinkorps. During the revolutionary events in Germany in 1918 and 1921, these were used as suppression of the communist uprising in major German cities like Berlin. Poland also got a few former Russian Garford Putilovs. The first was captured in February 1919 in the region of Vladimir Volyn-Kolyv. The second one was captured at about the same time as the first one, and it was also joined by the Zabologa platoon. The third vehicle, called the L.A.S.T, fought on the Bobsky Morgelets Road. Later, another renamed the General Paduskesky was also included in the Wojtkaporskie Platuna Skamorska Kudu Podskorskie, or the Wojtkamospurska platoon of the armored cars. It was sent to Warsaw at the disposal of 3 armored car divisions, and in 1921 it came to Grodno. According to the inventory of 1925, all 3 were transferred to the Krakow, where they joined the 5th Armored Car Division. In 1927, they were gradually decommissioned. Camouflage of the 1920s acquired during the fighting of November and December 1918. But the later alliances shifted and the German troops encountered the fire from the Latvian Garford under the name Lashkaneskis, which covered the retreat of the infantry. One was captured and immediately incorporated into the German Volkskorps, and it was used against their former owners in the approaches to Riga. It was also used later in Berlin at the Spartacus rebellions and scrapped afterwards, and the German notion, and it was renamed to the Kazamenekis. What a stretch, oh my god. I see 40 minutes, legit 40 minutes on this video. Of course some are reiterations, and of course some are dead space to look up some of these words, like the Polish, like that long Polish army car unit. Oh my gosh, the whatchamacallit, the Rania Polski Platuna Skadotska Skał Paliska Czech. Oh my god, that one had me there good, and I don't think I paused it. I think I paused it like once or twice to yawn, but everything is either, I don't know, just plain noise, like just plain silence, or trying to reiterate what I said. But what a ride, oh my gosh. Well, it is the tank. I honestly think tanks get like the most airtime, honestly, because the Renault was about 15 minutes long, I believe. So I mean, this is like 20 minutes tops, maybe. so that's not too bad. Anyway, I'm gonna end it before this goes over to 50 minutes, and yeah, I got a lot of editing to do. Let me see if my prognosis is true. Yeah, actually 20 minutes for the Renault tank. Oh my goodness. And that includes all other things like the American Army Corps, the American Tank Corps, and other stuff like that. But yeah, 17 minutes. So these tank videos, when you see L.A.S.T, prepare yourself for the last. Maybe during World War One wasn't too much, so most of them might be the maximum 10 minutes long, unless is well. I plan to do Mission Impossible, which would include Zeberga and Operation Albion. But besides those two naval battles, don't expect nothing on the 15 minutes from naval. But tanks and armored cars did play an important role in World War One, so they're gonna get a bit more screen time, and of course land and air, of course, would do a bit more. But naval battles, not too much. Maybe we could come across something that probably breaks 15 minutes. But until then, we'll see. I think the British may break it. There's no Jutland. Jutland is one of those documentary kind of things like Gallipoli. That means the magnum opus is the Somme for Britain. But that's okay because Verdun still has a great population, so I should be good on getting the Somme gameplay. And if Battlefield 1 really decides to go with the Somme, I will get some from there as well. But don't expect me to be, go MLG. I want it to be static trench warfare. But I guess going over the top, mostly be gameplay in trenches if they do include the Somme. But enough rambling, I'm already at 45 minutes. I'm literally at the voice note of a fully length documentary without ads. So until next time, guys, learn something. And I'll see you in Britain in, I don't know, maybe next week. Maybe take a week's break and get at least some of them built up. Because Britain is more documented than the Russians. That's why it kind of took a bit longer. And people just compile everything they know about Russia one time. So they're going to be much longer and some much shorter. But hope you learned something. And Putilov Garford, at least I got enough footage for this, even if I just drive around like a maniac. I should at least got enough footage for this. Alright guys, learn something.